My name is Monica. I am 61 years old, and last night my own son beat me until I bled over a bowl of unsalted soup. While I stayed on the kitchen floor, cleaning my own blood with an old rag, he calmly went to his room, closed the door, and fell asleep as if nothing had happened, as if hitting his mother was the most normal thing in the world. This morning, I woke up with my body aching, bruises on my arms, and a cut on my lip that still hurts when I talk. But what hurts the most are not the blows, it's the humiliation. It's knowing that my own son, whom I raised with so much love, to whom I gave everything, sees me as his personal servant, as if my only function in this world is to serve him and keep my mouth shut. I got up at 5 a.m, like every day. Greg was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in his impeccable gray suit, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look at me when I came in. He simply said, without looking up, "Breakfast. Quickly. I have an important meeting," as if nothing had happened. As if the night before he hadn't screamed at me that I was useless, that I was good for nothing, that if it weren't for the fact that I'm his mother, he would have already thrown me out on the street. I prepared his scrambled eggs exactly how he likes them, with 3 tablespoons of shredded cheese, 2 slices of toast, and black coffee with no sugar. Everything perfect, measured to the last detail. Because if something is wrong, even slightly, he explodes. And when Greg explodes, I'm the one who pays the consequences. While he was eating breakfast, the sound of a key in the front door arrived. It was Brooke, his wife, a young, elegant woman who always greets me with a fake smile and treats me as if I were invisible. She walked in with her light green dress and high heels, kissed Greg on the cheek, and sat at the table as if she owned the place. "Good morning, Mrs. Davis," she said with that sweet voice she only uses when Greg is present. "How are you this morning?" I wanted to tell her that I woke up beaten by her husband, that I have bruises all over my back, that I can't take it anymore. But instead I smiled and said, "Fine, thank you. Brooke, would you like some breakfast?" Greg shot me a warning look. His eyes clearly told me, one word out of place and tonight will be worse. Then he added, with that fake smile he only uses for an audience, "Look, Mom, I bought you this new makeup. It'll be perfect for you. Cover up those little bumps you got last night when you tripped, okay?" Little bumps. That's what he calls what he did to me. As if it had been an accident. As if I had tripped on my own into his fist. I took the makeup without saying a word. It was an expensive foundation, the kind that costs more than $50. He surely bought it with my retirement money because he manages my entire bank account. He says it's for my own good, that at my age, I can't handle money on my own anymore. The truth is, I haven't seen a cent of my own pension in 2 years. Brooke looked at him with those bright eyes of admiration. "You're so thoughtful, honey, always taking care of your mom. If only she knew. If she knew that her perfect husband, that successful executive who manages multi-million-dollar accounts in his office, comes home every night to unload his frustration on me." After breakfast, Greg put on his red tie, picked up his briefcase, and whispered in my ear while Brooke was touching up her makeup. "Remember what we talked about last night. If you ever open your mouth, if you tell anyone what happens here, you will regret it. No one will believe you. You're a crazy old woman living off her son's charity." His words made my blood run cold. They left together, hand in hand, like the perfect couple they pretend to be. I watched them from the window get into Greg's new car, a black sedan that cost more than $40,000. My money. All bought with my money. When the house fell silent, I sat in the kitchen and began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of rage, of helplessness. Because I know I have to do something, but I don't know what. I know I can't go on living like this, but I also don't know how to escape this nightmare. I sat in that silent kitchen for hours, watching the sunlight move slowly across the floor tiles. This house used to be my refuge. I bought it 30 years ago with the money I saved working as an executive secretary at the law firm of Morrison and Associates. 40 years of my life dedicated to that job, waking up at 5 a.m, always arriving on time, organizing the lives of others. I never imagined I would end up a prisoner in my own home. It all started 3 years ago, when Greg divorced his first wife. He showed up at my door one night with a suitcase in his hand and that lost little boy look that always melted my heart. "Mom, I need to stay here for a while. just until I get my financial situation sorted out. He told me the divorce had left him bankrupt, that he had lost the house, that he had nowhere to live. I, like the foolish mother I always was, opened my door and my heart. Of course, son, this is your house too. How naive. I didn't know I was inviting the devil to live with me. The first few months were normal. Greg would get up early, go to work, come back at night, we'd have dinner together. He even helped me with the grocery shopping. I thought we would finally have the mother-son relationship I always dreamed of. But little by little, things began to change. First, it was small comments. Mom, this food is too salty. Mom, why don't you clean the bathroom better? Mom, your clothes are too wrinkled, it's embarrassing. Comments that hurt me, but which I justified by thinking he was stressed about the divorce. Then he started meddling in my finances. Mom, at your age, you shouldn't be handling so much cash. It's dangerous. Let me help you with your accounts. And I, like the idiot I am, gave him access to my bank account. It's just to help me, I thought. He's my son, he would never hurt me. How wrong I was. Within 6 months, Greg had completely taken over my money. My $1,200 monthly pension went straight into his account. He would give me $20 a week for personal expenses, as if I were a child receiving an allowance. When I asked him about the rest of the money, he would say, Mom, I'm investing your savings so they can grow. Trust me. Then came Brooke, a woman 25 years younger than him, with a perfect smile and an ambition you could see from a mile away. Greg met her at his office, where she worked as a marketing assistant. 6 months later, they got married in a ceremony that cost more than $15,000. My money, of course. Ever since Brooke came into our lives, everything got worse. Greg began to treat me as if I were the maid. Mom, prepare dinner for Brooke and me. Something elegant, she's used to fine things. Mom, clean the guest bathroom. Important people are coming over. Mom, wash this shirt by hand. It's too expensive for the washing machine. And I obeyed. I always obeyed, because I was afraid he would get angry, afraid he would carry out his threat to kick me out of my own house. Because although the house is legally mine, Greg convinced me to put his name on the deed as well, for security. Mom, just in case something happens to you. The violence began a year ago. At first, it was accidental shoves. Then, pinches on the arm when I didn't do something the way he wanted. You just get on my nerves, Mom. You're so slow. Then it escalated to punches on the shoulder, slaps when the food wasn't to his taste, a punch in the back if I didn't clean fast enough. But last night was different. Last night he crossed a line I never thought he would cross. I had prepared a vegetable soup for dinner. It was Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, we always have a light dinner. I set the table carefully, served the toast, the hot soup, everything perfect. Greg came home tired from the office. He sat at the table without greeting me. He took the first spoonful and his face transformed. What the hell is this? He shouted, spitting the soup back into the bowl. It has no salt. It's as bland as water. I apologized immediately. I'm sorry, son. I forgot the salt. Let me add some. But it was too late. Greg shot up from the table like a wild animal. He took the soup bowl and threw it in my face. The hot liquid burned my cheek. The porcelain shards cut my lip. You're useless, he screamed, grabbing my arm so tightly I knew it would leave bruises. 40 years working as a secretary and you can't even make a decent soup. You're pathetic. He shoved me against the kitchen wall. My head hit the tile and I saw stars. But he didn't stop there. He slapped me so hard my ear rang for hours. Then another. And another. Brooke is coming for lunch tomorrow, he told me as I covered my face with my hands. She's bringing her friends from work. I want you to prepare something special, and it better be perfect, because if you make me look bad, if you give even a single hint of how pathetic you are, I swear to God I will kick you out of this house. Then he calmed down, as he always does after hitting me. He bent down, helped me up, cleaned the blood from my lip with a napkin. I'm sorry, Mom, he said in a soft voice. It's just that it frustrates me to see you like this. I know you can do better. It's all for your own good, so you can learn. And he went to bed, calmly, as if nothing had happened. I stayed up all night in the kitchen, cleaning the remains of soup and broken porcelain from the floor. Every little piece I picked up was like collecting the fragments of my dignity. My lip was still bleeding, but it was no longer just physical pain I felt. It was something deeper, darker. It was the realization that my own son, the person I loved most in this world, had become my tormentor. As I cleaned, I began to remember how we got here. Greg wasn't always like this. When he was a child, he was sweet, affectionate. His father abandoned us when he was 8, and from then on, it was just him and me against the world. I worked double shifts for years to give him everything he needed. I put him in the best private school I could afford, bought him designer clothes, gave him piano lessons, English lessons, anything he asked for. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I spoiled him so much that he never learned the value of respect, of effort, of true love. I always gave him everything on a silver platter, without asking for anything in return. And now, 35 years later, I'm the one paying the consequences of my decisions. At dawn, I heard his footsteps coming down the stairs. My heart began to beat fast, as it always does when he is near. It's incredible how a person can live in a constant state of alert in their own home. He entered the kitchen, already dressed in his black suit, checking his phone as he did every morning. This time, he didn't even ask me for breakfast. He simply sat down and waited for me to serve him. I prepared his scrambled eggs, his black coffee, his 2 slices of toast, all in absolute silence. He ate while answering emails, as if I were invisible. At 7:30, Brooke arrived. This time she was wearing a tight yellow dress and high-heeled shoes that echoed on the floor like hammer blows. She looked radiant, as always. I wonder if she has ever noticed the bruises I have, the marks on my arms, the way I flinch every time Greg raises his voice. "Good morning, Mrs. Davis," she said with that plastic smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Fine, thank you," I lied, as always. "Would you like some breakfast?" "Just a coffee, please." "Light, with artificial sweetener." As I served her coffee, I noticed she was watching me out of the corner of her eye. Her eyes lingered on my swollen lip, on the bruise peeking out from the collar of my blouse. For a moment, I thought she would say something, that she would ask what had happened to me. But instead, she simply looked away and went back to checking her phone. Greg finished his breakfast and stared at me. "Remember what I told you last night, Mom? Brooke is coming for lunch with 3 of her friends. I want you to prepare something special. Pasta with shrimp, Caesar salads, desserts, and buy white wine, the good kind, not that cheap crap you usually buy." He gave me 3 $20 bills as if it were a great generosity. $60 to prepare lunch for 5 people, with what he spends on a single shirt. "And another thing," he added, leaning in to whisper in my ear while Brooke wasn't looking. "Put on that makeup I bought you. Cover those marks well. If any of her friends ask something strange, if you make any comment about your appearance, you will regret it. Do you understand me?" I nodded, feeling my hands tremble slightly. He smiled, gave me a kiss on the forehead like the perfect son he pretends to be, and they left together. As soon as the door closed, I collapsed into a kitchen chair. $60 for an elaborate lunch. Fresh shrimp costs at least $30 a pound. Good wine, another $20. How am I supposed to work miracles with so little money? But it wasn't just the money that distressed me. It was the pressure of having to act normal in front of Brooke's friends, of pretending to be the happy mother-in-law of a perfect family, when the reality is that I am an abused woman in my own home. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and almost didn't recognize myself. My lip was swollen and purple, with a small cut at the corner. My eyes were red and puffy from so much crying. The bruise on my neck looked like a dark stain spreading towards my collarbone. I opened the makeup Greg had given me. It was an expensive, imported brand foundation, the kind that elegant women like Brooke use every day. I began to apply it carefully, covering every mark, every bruise, every piece of evidence of what really happens in this house. As I put on my makeup, I couldn't help but think of all the times I had done this very thing. How many mornings had I woken up to hide bruises, to invent excuses about falls and accidents? I bumped into the table. The closet door slipped. I fell down the stairs, one lie after another, to protect my son's reputation. I went out to do the shopping with my list in hand and my face perfectly made up. At the supermarket, I tried to stretch those $60 as much as I could. I bought frozen shrimp instead of fresh prawns, the cheapest brand of wine that wasn't terrible, pasta on sale. Every penny counted. While waiting in the checkout line, an older woman approached me. It was Clara, my next-door neighbor, a widow of about 65 who has always been kind to me. "Hi, Monica," she said with a warm smile. "How are you, dear? I haven't seen you in the garden in a while." "Hi, Clara. I'm fine, thanks. I've been very busy with things around the house." She looked at me intently, and I noticed her eyes linger on my lip, despite the makeup. "You hurt your mouth?" she asked with genuine concern. I felt my heart race. "No, it's nothing. I hit myself with the closet door last night. You know how clumsy I am." Clara frowned but didn't press. "Well, if you need anything, you know where I live. I'm always home in the afternoons." Her words went straight to my heart. It had been so long since anyone had offered me help so genuinely, since anyone had treated me with true kindness. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything, to ask for help, to confess the nightmare I'm living. But Greg's voice echoed in my head. "If you ever open your mouth, if you tell anyone what happens here, you will regret it. No one will believe you. You're a crazy old woman living off her son's charity." "Thank you, Clara," I said simply. "You're very kind." I returned home and started cooking like a madwoman. I had to have everything ready by 12 o'clock, when Brooke and her friends would arrive. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, set the table with the good china, and arranged flowers in the center. Everything had to be perfect. As I cooked, I couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had said. "If you need anything, you know where I live." Could she suspect something? Could she have heard the screams coming from my house at night? At 11:30, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Monica Davis?" a male voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is the accountant from your son Greg's company. We need to speak with you urgently about some discrepancies in the accounts. Could you come to the office this afternoon?" My heart stopped. "Discrepancies? I don't understand. I'd rather not speak over the phone." "Ma'am, can you come at 3 in the afternoon? It's very important." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. What had Greg done at his job? Why were they calling me? A bad feeling settled in my stomach, but I didn't have time to think more because Brooke and her friends were already arriving. The doorbell rang at exactly 12 o'clock. I took a deep breath, touched up my makeup one last time, and went to open the door. There was Brooke with her 3 friends, all dressed as if they were going to a fashion show. Expensive dresses, designer handbags, shoes that cost more than my monthly pension. "Hello, Mrs. Davis," Brooke said with that sweet voice she reserves for special occasions. "I'd like to introduce my friends. This is Beatrice, she works in human resources. This is Brenda, from the marketing department. And this is Eleanor, from legal." My heart almost stopped when I heard Eleanor's name. It couldn't be a coincidence. I looked at her closely, and sure enough, it was her. Eleanor, my younger sister, whom I hadn't seen in over 2 years. Eleanor looked at me with the same surprise, but we both played it cool. She has always been smarter than me, more astute. She immediately understood that something strange was going on, especially when she saw my made-up face and my nervous demeanor. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Davis," she said formally, as if she didn't know me. "Your daughter-in-law has told us so much about you." I invited them into the dining room, where I had laid out my best tablecloth, the porcelain china I inherited from my mother, the crystal glasses I only used on special occasions. Everything looked elegant, just as Greg had demanded. I served the lunch, trying to keep my hands steady. The pasta with shrimp had turned out well, despite the limited budget. The Caesar salad looked fresh. The bread was warm. I even managed to prepare a simple tiramisu for dessert. The women ate and chatted about work, about their lives, about plans for the weekend. I went back and forth from the kitchen, serving more wine, clearing plates, like the perfect hostess I was supposed to be. But Eleanor didn't take her eyes off me. I knew that look. It was the same one she'd get when we were kids, and she knew I was hiding something. Throughout the meal, she watched me discreetly, studying my every move. "The food is delicious," commented Beatrice. "Did you cook all this yourself, Mrs. Davis?" "Yes, I enjoy cooking," I replied with a forced smile. It's a pleasure when it's for people as charming as you. How lucky Greg is to have such a dedicated mother-in-law, added Brenda. These days it's hard to find women who are so devoted to the home. Brooke smiled proudly. It's true, Mrs. Davis is always on top of everything. It's like having a housekeeper, but better, because she does it with love. Her words hurt like daggers, but I kept the smile on. A housekeeper, that's what she thought of me. Not a mother, not a person with rights and dignity, but a free servant. Eleanor cleared her throat. And what did you do before, Mrs. Davis? Were you always dedicated to the home? No, I replied, feeling a bit of pride for the first time in a long time. I worked for 40 years as an executive secretary at the Morrison & Associates law firm. I retired 3 years ago. Eleanor's eyes lit up. Morrison & Associates was one of the most prestigious firms in the city, where she had worked as an intern during her law school studies. How interesting, she exclaimed. I know that firm. They have a very good reputation. You must have met a lot of important people in all those years. Yes, I said with a more genuine smile. I met judges, prosecutors, important lawyers. I even helped on some big cases. Mr. Morrison always said I was indispensable. Brooke looked uncomfortable with the turn of the conversation. She didn't like me being the center of attention for my professional achievements to be discussed. She quickly changed the subject. Well, but now Mrs. Davis is retired, enjoying her well-deserved rest, she said with that fake smile. Greg takes care of everything, her finances, her needs. He's a very responsible son. Eleanor stared at me when Brooke said that. I know my sister, and I know those words sounded strange to her. A woman who worked for 40 years at an important law firm doesn't need her son to take care of her finances. The lunch continued with trivial conversations, but I felt the tension growing. Eleanor kept watching me, and I knew she had noticed something was wrong. When I went to the kitchen for dessert, she followed me. Do you need help? She asked, but she was really looking for a moment to talk to me alone. No, thank you. Everything is under control, I replied, avoiding her gaze. Monica, she said in a low voice, using my real name for the first time that afternoon. Are you okay? You seem different. For a moment, all my defenses came down. I wanted to hug her, tell her everything, ask her to help me. But just then, I heard Greg's keys in the front door. He had come home from work earlier than usual. Everything is fine, Eleanor, I said quickly. I'm just a little tired. Greg entered the dining room with that perfect smile he uses when there are guests. He greeted the women elegantly, kissed Brooke on the cheek, and looked at me with approval. The lunch had gone well, just as he had ordered. How are the most beautiful ladies in the office? He said with that fake charisma he uses in public. I hope my mother has taken good care of you. Excellently, replied Beatrice. Your mother is charming. Greg put his hand on my shoulder, and I tensed up automatically. He felt my reaction and squeezed a little harder, as a silent warning. She's the best mother in the world, he said, but his fingers dug into my shoulder through my blouse. Always looking out for everyone, always sacrificing for the family. The women began to say their goodbyes after dessert. Eleanor was the last to leave, and before she went out, she took my hand. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Davis, she said out loud for Greg to hear. But then she whispered in my ear, we'll see each other soon. When they were all gone, Greg closed the door, and his expression changed completely. The mask of the perfect son disappeared, and he was back to being the monster he always was. You did well, he told me coldly. For once, you didn't embarrass me. It wasn't a compliment. It was a statement that I had fulfilled my duties as a servant. While I cleared the plates and cleaned the dining room, he went to his room to change clothes. But before he left, he reminded me, by the way, the technician is coming tomorrow to check your computer. He says you've been browsing strange pages. My blood ran cold. I didn't have my own computer. I only used his when I needed something. And the only strange thing I had been looking for lately were pages about domestic violence, about shelters for battered women, about helplines. He knew I had been looking for information. He knew I was considering asking for help. At that moment, my phone rang. It was the accountant from Greg's company again. Mrs. Davis, can you come this afternoon at 3? It's urgent. I looked at the clock. It was 2:15. Greg was in his room, probably taking a nap. It was my chance. "Yes," I said in a low voice. "I'll be there." I took my keys, my purse, and left the house silently. I didn't know what awaited me in that office, but I had a feeling my life was about to change forever. As I walked to the bus stop, I remembered Eleanor's words. "We'll see each other soon." My sister had noticed something, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a small spark of hope. The office building where Greg worked was one of those modern skyscrapers downtown, all glass and steel, that commanded respect from the sidewalk. I had never been there before. For all these years, my son had kept his work life completely separate from me, as if it were a secret I shouldn't know. I went up to the 18th floor, where the offices of North Star Corporate Holdings were. The receptionist, a young woman with a professional smile, directed me to the accountant's office. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Mrs. Davis, a man of about 50, with glasses and a formal suit, greeted me. "I'm Adrian Castillo, the company's chief accountant. Thank you for coming so quickly." I sat across from his desk, trying to seem calm, though inside I was trembling. His eyes had a seriousness that made me even more nervous. "Ma'am, I need to ask you a few questions about your bank account," he began, opening a folder full of documents, specifically about some movements we've detected in recent months. "I don't understand," I said with a shaky voice. "What does my account have to do with the company?" Adrian looked at me with a mix of pity and concern. "Mrs. Davis, we have discovered that your son Greg has been using company funds to make transfers to his personal bank account, transfers that are then withdrawn from your account." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. "That can't be true. Greg is an exemplary employee. He would never do something like that." "I'm afraid he has," Adrian said, showing me a series of documents. "In the last 6 months, he has diverted over $50,000 of corporate funds. The money first appears in his personal account, but is immediately transferred to the account he shares with you." My world collapsed. $50,000. My son was not only physically abusing me, but he was using me as an unwitting accomplice in his thefts. "But I didn't know anything," I said desperately. "He manages my entire bank account. I don't authorize any transfers." "We know," Adrian told me gently. "That's why I called you before proceeding legally. We need you to file a formal complaint for unauthorized use of your bank account. It's the only way to clear your name in this matter." I felt nauseous. I wasn't just a victim of domestic violence. I was now a victim of financial fraud. And worst of all, my own son had made me his accomplice without my knowledge. "What will happen to Greg?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "If you file the complaint, he will be arrested for corporate embezzlement and fraudulent use of bank accounts. These are serious crimes that can carry between 5 and 10 years in prison." I left that office in a total state of shock. I walked the downtown streets for hours, aimlessly, trying to process all the information. My son was a thief, a criminal, and I had been his unwitting tool. When I finally returned home, it was already 6 in the evening. Greg was in the living room, watching television, as if it were a normal day. Seeing me come in, he looked at me with that superior expression he always wore. "Where were you?" he asked in an accusatory tone. "I got home from work and you weren't here. The house was a mess after the lunch." For the first time in years, I looked him straight in the eye without looking down. "I was at your office." His expression changed immediately. The mask of control cracked for a second, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "What did you say?" "I was at your office, Greg. I spoke with the accountant. I know what you've been doing." He got up from the sofa slowly, like a predator preparing to attack. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I think you're confused." $50,000, I said, feeling my voice grow firmer. $50,000 that you've stolen from your company using my bank account. Greg came closer to me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't back down. Something had changed inside me that afternoon. Maybe it was knowing I wasn't alone, that there were other people who knew the truth. "Listen to me carefully, you stupid old woman," he said in a low, threatening voice. "You have no idea what you're saying. That money is mine by right. You owe me for everything I've invested in you over these years. The food you eat, the roof over your head, the clothes you wear." "With my own money," I replied. With my pension, with my savings, with the money I earned working for 40 years. He grabbed my arm, but this time I didn't stay silent. "Let go of me!" I screamed with all the strength I had. He was so surprised by my reaction that he actually let go. For 3 years, I had been his silent victim, and now for the first time, I was shouting at him. "You're crazy," he said, but his voice no longer sounded so confident. "No one is going to believe you. You're a senile old woman who doesn't even know what she's saying." "The accountant believed me," I told him. "The documents speak for themselves. The transfers are recorded. Everything is documented." Greg was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then his expression hardened even more. "If you open your mouth, if you make any complaint, I swear I'll destroy you," he threatened. "This house is also in my name. I can kick you out on the street tomorrow. And without my help, without my money, you'll die alone like a dog." But for the first time, his threats didn't terrify me. There was something different in me, a strength I didn't know I had. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Greg," I said. And as I said it, I realized it was true, for the first time in 3 years. "I'm not afraid of you." He raised his hand to hit me, but just then, the doorbell rang. It was Clara, my neighbor. "Monica," she shouted from outside. "Monica, is everything all right?" I heard screaming. Greg slowly lowered his hand. He couldn't hit me with a witness nearby. His reputation was too important to him. "Go see what she wants," he said through gritted teeth. "And you better not say anything strange." I went to open the door with trembling legs. Clara was there, with a worried expression, holding a casserole dish. "Hello, dear," she said. "I brought you some stew I made." But I heard loud voices and got worried. Over her shoulder, I saw another woman with her. It was Eleanor, my sister. She was wearing casual clothes and her hair was pulled back, but I recognized her immediately. "Hello," Eleanor said, pretending not to know me. "I'm new in the neighborhood and was visiting Mrs. Clara. I hope we're not intruding." Greg appeared behind me, his fake smile perfectly in place. "No problem, ladies. My mother was just a little upset because she burned the dinner. You know how older women get with these things." Clara looked at him with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Of course," she said. "Well, Monica, here's the food. And remember, if you need anything, I'm right next door." Eleanor looked me straight in the eye. "Yes, Mrs. Davis. Anything you need, day or night." When they left, Greg slammed the door shut. "Damn nosy old women," he muttered. "But this isn't over. Tomorrow we're going to the bank together, and you're going to sign all the papers I tell you to. You're going to withdraw the complaint you've probably already filed, and you're going to say it was all a misunderstanding." "No," I told him simply. "What do you mean, no?" "I'm not signing anything. I'm not withdrawing any complaint. And I'm not going to continue being an accomplice to your thefts." Greg looked at me with a rage I had never seen before. It was as if he had finally taken off all his masks and was showing me his true nature. "Fine," he said with a calmness that scared me more than his screams. "If that's how you want to play, we'll play. But I'm warning you, when I'm done with you, you're going to wish you had never been born." I didn't sleep at all that night. Greg locked himself in his room, but I could hear him talking on the phone for hours. I didn't know what he was planning, but I knew I had to be prepared for the worst. At 3 a.m, I heard a strange noise in the garden. I peeked through the window and saw a figure moving among the bushes. It was Clara, and she seemed to be installing something near my window. The next day, I realized what she had done. She had placed a small security camera pointed at my house, hidden among the plants. My neighbor knew something bad was happening, and she was documenting everything. The next day dawned gray and rainy, as if the weather reflected the storm that was about to break in my life. Greg got up earlier than usual, at 5 a.m. I heard him moving around the house, talking on the phone in a low voice, preparing something that had my nerves on edge. When I came down to the kitchen, he was already dressed in his best suit, the black one he wore for the most important meetings. His hair was perfectly combed, his tie impeccable. He looked like the successful executive everyone believed him to be, not the monster who lived under my roof. "Good morning, Mom," he said with a strangely sweet, almost sing-song voice. "Slept well, I hope." That sweetness gave me goosebumps. I knew my son well enough to know that when he was being kind, it was because he was planning something terrible. Yes, I lied, serving him his coffee as I did every day. That's good, he said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Because today is going to be a very special day. I've been thinking all night about our conversation yesterday. He sat at the table and began to eat his breakfast calmly, as if we were a normal family, but there was something in his attitude that kept me on alert. I've decided you're right, he continued. Maybe I've been too hard on you. After all, you're my mother, and you deserve respect. His words confused me completely. Greg admitting he was wrong? Apologizing? It was so out of character that I immediately knew it was a trap. That's why, he went on, spreading butter on his toast, today we're going to the bank together. We're going to clear up this whole misunderstanding with my company. You're going to explain that you authorized all the transfers, that you knew exactly what was happening with your money. There it was, the real reason for his fake kindness. I'm not doing that, Greg, I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile slowly faded. Of course you are, Mom, because if you don't, very unpleasant things are going to happen. Are you threatening me? No, Mom, he said, finishing his coffee. I'm explaining reality to you. Look around. This house. This table where you eat your breakfast. The bed you sleep in. The food you eat. All of this is possible because I allow it. And if I don't allow it anymore. He let the sentence hang in the air, but the message was clear. He would leave me on the street if I didn't obey. Besides, he added, taking out his phone, I've been thinking of calling some doctors I know. Doctors who specialize in older people with mental problems, senile dementia, you know. It's so sad when mothers start making up stories, accusing their own children of terrible things. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Not only was he threatening to kick me out, but to have me declared insane, incompetent, so that no one would believe my testimony. There are several witnesses who can confirm your deteriorating mental state, he continued in that cold, calculating voice. Brooke, for example. Just yesterday I mentioned to her how confused you've been lately. The friends who came for lunch also noticed something strange about you. It was a lie, but he was so convincing that for a moment I doubted my own sanity. That's how his manipulation worked. He made me doubt everything, even my own perception of reality. So we're going to the bank at 10, he said, getting up from the table. You're going to put on your best dress. You're going to fix yourself up nicely, and you're going to smile while you sign every paper they put in front of you. Understood? I didn't answer him. I simply began to clear the breakfast dishes, trying to buy time to think. I'm talking to you, he shouted, and all trace of his fake kindness disappeared. Understood. Understood, I murmured, hating myself for being so cowardly. Greg left for his office, but before he went out, he warned me. Don't you dare leave this house. Don't you dare talk on the phone to anyone. I'll be back at 9:30 to take you to the bank. As soon as the door closed, I collapsed into a kitchen chair and began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of pure rage. Rage at him, but mostly rage at myself for having let things get to this point. I was like that for a few minutes until I heard a soft knock on the back kitchen door. It was Clara, with a look of urgency on her face. Monica, open up quickly, she whispered through the glass. It's important. I opened the door and she came in quickly, looking around to make sure we were alone. I heard everything, she said without preamble. I have the camera set up near your kitchen window. I recorded the entire conversation you had with your son. My heart began to beat faster. Everything. The threats, the blackmail, the way he spoke to you. I have evidence that he's forcing you to lie about the stolen money. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. What can we do with that? Clara smiled. I have a friend who works at the prosecutor's office. Her name is Brenda, and she specializes in cases of domestic abuse and financial fraud. But I need you to come with me right now. I can't, I said, feeling the fear take hold of me again. Greg told me not to leave the house. If he finds out. Monica, Clara said, taking my hands. Listen to me carefully. If you go to that bank today and sign those papers, your son will be cleared of all charges. He will continue to steal money, and he will continue to abuse you. But on top of that, you will become a willing accomplice to his thefts. She was right. If I signed those papers, I would not only lose my dignity, but I would also become a criminal in the eyes of the law. But if I don't go, I said with a trembling voice, he'll carry out his threats. He'll kick me out. He'll say I'm crazy. He won't be able to do any of that, Clara interrupted. Because we're going to present the evidence before he can act. Brenda told me that with the recordings I have, they can arrest him immediately. I looked at the clock. It was 8:30. Greg would be back in an hour. Are you sure your friend can help me? Completely sure. But we have to go now. Monica, this is our only chance. I made a decision that would change my life forever. I went to my room, took my purse with my most important documents, and left that house with Clara. As we walked to her car, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Courage. For the first time, I was taking control of my own life. The prosecutor's office was a typical government building, with long hallways and small offices. Brenda turned out to be a woman in her 40s, with an intelligent gaze and a way of speaking that inspired confidence. Mrs. Davis, she said after reviewing the recordings Clara had brought, what your son is doing constitutes multiple crimes: domestic abuse, financial fraud, blackmail, and attempted obstruction of justice. What does that mean? I asked. It means we can arrest him today, Brenda replied. But I need you to file a formal complaint for all these crimes. Are you willing to do that? I looked at the clock. It was 9:15. In 15 minutes, Greg would be arriving home to take me to the bank. When he realized I wasn't there, his rage would be uncontrollable. Yes, I said, feeling my voice grow firmer. I'm ready to file the complaint. Brenda smiled. Perfect. While you fill out the papers, I'll coordinate with the police to go arrest your son. Do you know where he is at the moment? He should be arriving at my house, I said. He said he would pick me up at 9:30. Even better, Brenda said, picking up her phone. It's easier to arrest him in a known location. While I filled out the complaint forms, Brenda coordinated with the police. Clara stayed with me the whole time, holding my hand, giving me strength. Are you sure about this, Monica? She asked. Once we sign these papers, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied. At 10:30, Brenda's phone rang. It was the police confirming that they had arrested Greg at my house. They found him screaming like a madman, breaking things, looking for me all over the house. He's in custody, Brenda told me. The charges are serious. It's very likely he won't be able to make bail. I felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted off me. For the first time in 3 years, I knew that tonight I would sleep without fear. When we got back to my house that afternoon, the place looked like a battlefield. Greg had destroyed practically everything he could get his hands on before the police arrested him. The sofa cushions were slashed, there were broken plates all over the kitchen floor, and the family photos hanging on the walls were in pieces. My God, Clara whispered, looking at the destruction. How could he do all this in such a short time? I knew the answer. I knew Greg's blind fury when things didn't go his way. I had seen that rage before, but never directed at inanimate objects. Usually, I was the target of his anger. Brenda, who had come with us to document the damage, was taking pictures of everything. This will serve as additional evidence of his violent behavior, she explained. Destruction of property during a fit of rage. The judge will see exactly what kind of person your son Island. As we cleaned up the broken glass and picked up the pieces of my former life, my phone began to ring insistently. It was an unknown number. Don't answer, Brenda warned me. It's probably him calling from jail. Let it go to voicemail. Sure enough, when I checked the messages, it was Greg's voice, but it sounded completely different. He was no longer the threatening monster from the morning. He was the scared little boy he pretended to be when he wanted to manipulate me. Mom, his voice broke in the recording. Mom, please, come get me out of here. It was all a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt you. You know I love you. That you're the most important thing in my life. Please, Mom, don't let me rot in this jail. I'm your son, your only son. He had left 5 similar messages, each one more desperate than the last. In the last one, he was even crying. It's part of his manipulation strategy, Brenda explained. First violence and threats, now victimhood and guilt. It's a typical pattern in abusers. Although I understood rationally what was happening, hearing my son cry broke my heart. For 35 years, he had been my baby, my reason for living. It was hard to separate the monster he had become from the child he once was. "Are you okay?" Clara asked, noticing my expression. "It's complicated," I admitted. "I know I did the right thing, but he's still my son." That night, Clara insisted that I stay at her house. "Your house isn't safe now," she told me. "Greg has friends, acquaintances, maybe Brooke. Someone could come seeking revenge." She was right. In the voicemails, Greg had mentioned that Brooke was handling the situation from the outside. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I was afraid to find out. Clara's house was small but cozy. She had a guest room with a single bed and a small desk. "It was my daughter's room before she got married," she explained. "Now it's yours for as long as you need it." For the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without fear. I didn't have to worry about Greg's footsteps in the hallway, or his nightly screams, or waking up to blows. It was a strange, almost unsettling feeling. Peace can also be frightening when you're not used to it. The next day, Brenda called me early with news. "Greg's bail hearing is today at 2 in the afternoon, she informed me. "The judge will decide if he can get out of jail while awaiting trial." "What are the chances of him being released?" I asked, feeling the fear return. "With the evidence we have, very slim. But I need you to come testify at the hearing. Your testimony will be crucial for the judge to understand the danger he poses." The hearing was in a small courtroom. Greg was sitting at the defendant's table, dressed in an orange prison jumpsuit. When he saw me enter, his expression changed completely. He was no longer the repentant child from the voicemails. He was pure, contained rage. Brooke was sitting in the public benches, dressed elegantly as always, but she looked haggard, as if she hadn't slept in days. When our eyes met, I could see something in hers that surprised me. Shame. The judge was an older man, about 60, with a serious but fair look. He reviewed all the documents before starting. "Mrs. Davis," he said when it was my turn to testify, "tell me in your own words what you have been living through in your home for the last few years." I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told them about the beatings, about the control of my money, about the threats, about the constant humiliation. My voice broke at times, but I kept talking. When I mentioned the 50,000 stolen dollars, I saw Greg tense up in his seat. His lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit, tried to object constantly, but the judge silenced him. "And what did your son say to you yesterday morning regarding your testimony?" the judge asked. "He threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent if I didn't lie for him. He told me he would kick me out on the street, that I would be left with nothing." The judge reviewed the recordings Clara had made. He listened to them in their entirety, with headphones, while the whole courtroom waited in silence. "Mr. Gregory Davis," the judge said when he finished, "the evidence presented shows a clear pattern of domestic abuse, financial fraud, and witness intimidation. Considering the seriousness of the charges and the risk he poses to the victim, the request for bail is denied. He will remain in custody until the trial date." Greg exploded. "This is an injustice," he shouted, standing up. "That crazy old woman is making everything up. I'm a respectable citizen. I have rights." The guards had to restrain him as he continued to shout. "You're going to regret this, Mom. When I get out of here, I'm going to make you pay for every day I spend in this jail." His threats echoed throughout the courtroom, confirming exactly what I had testified about his violent character. After the hearing, Brooke approached me in the courthouse hallway. "Mrs. Davis," she said with a trembling voice, "I need to talk to you." Brenda and Clara tensed up, but I motioned to them that it was okay. "What do you want, Brooke?" I asked. "I want to apologize," she said, and for the first time since I had known her, her voice sounded genuine. "I knew something wasn't right in that house. I would hear screams. I saw your bruises. I noticed how you would shrink every time he raised his voice. And why did you never say anything?" "Because I was afraid," she admitted. "Greg had threatened me too. He told me that if I ever betrayed him, he would destroy my career, my reputation. And I was a coward. I let you suffer alone because I was afraid of losing my comfortable life." Her eyes filled with tears. When he was arrested yesterday, I found documents in his home office. He hadn't just been stealing money from his company. He had also been stealing from my personal account. We've been married for 2 years, and I never realized he was a con man. "What are you going to do now?" I asked her. "I'm filing for divorce immediately," she said with determination. "And I'm going to testify against him at the trial. I've already spoken with a lawyer. I want to cooperate with the prosecution, so he pays for everything he did to us." When we left the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Real hope. Not only had I managed to escape my son, but now I had allies in my fight for justice. That afternoon, as we walked back to Clara's house, Brenda gave me more good news. "The company where Greg worked wants to reach a settlement," she informed me. "They are willing not to press additional charges against you if you cooperate in returning the stolen money. Furthermore, in recognition that you were a victim of fraud, they are going to pay you a compensation of $20,000. $20,000. It was more money than I had had available in the last 3 years. "What about my house?" I asked. Greg said it was also in his name. "We checked the documents," Brenda said, smiling. "Your son lied. The deed is still only in your name. He forged some papers, but legally, the house is completely yours." For the first time in a long time, I began to see a possible future. A future where I could live without fear, where I could make my own decisions, where I could be the owner of my own life. But I also knew that Greg was not going to give up easily. His threats at the hearing had been clear. This war was just beginning. 3 weeks after Greg's arrest, my life had completely changed, but not in the way I expected. Although I was physically safe at Clara's house, psychologically, I was still his prisoner. I had developed a constant paranoia that kept me awake most nights. Every noise made me jump. Every car that stopped in front of the house made me run to the window. Every unknown phone call triggered a panic attack. Brenda had explained to me that it was normal, that after years of abuse, the fear doesn't disappear overnight. "It's post-traumatic stress syndrome," she had told me. "Your mind and body are used to living in a constant state of alert. It will take time to heal." But there was something more than just trauma. Greg had managed to get messages out from jail, messages that made my blood run cold. The first came through a different lawyer, one who wasn't his official representative. It was a handwritten letter, in the handwriting I knew so well. "Dear Mom," it said, "I hope you're enjoying your little victory. I hope you feel very brave for betraying me. But I want you to know something. This isn't over. I know things about you that no one else knows. Secrets you've kept for 40 years working at that law firm. Things that could ruin not only your reputation, but your freedom." My heart stopped when I read those lines. What secrets? During my 40 years as a secretary at Morrison & Associates, I had handled confidential information, of course, but I had never done anything illegal. Remember the Williams versus the state case, Mom? The one from 15 years ago? I found the documents you hid. The ones you altered to help Mr. Morrison win that multi-million-dollar case. Documents that, if they come to light, could send you to prison for obstruction of justice. My hands began to tremble violently. The Williams case. I remembered it vaguely. It had been a difficult case, where the firm represented a pharmaceutical company accused of hiding fatal side effects of a medication. Mr. Morrison had asked me to organize some documents, to remove certain memos that could harm his client. I had thought it was normal, that it was part of my job as a secretary. I never fully understood the legal implications of what I had done. But Greg was right. I had technically altered evidence in a court case. "I have copies of everything, Mom, and if you don't drop the charges against me, if you don't come and publicly apologize for your lies, those documents will end up in the hands of the district attorney." Imagine the headlines. 61-year-old secretary arrested for complicity in covering up medication-related deaths. The rest of the letter detailed exactly how he was going to destroy my life if I didn't obey. He had contacts in the media. He knew journalists who would pay well for a story of judicial corruption. My picture would be in all the papers, my name forever associated with a scandal. When Clara found me crying with the letter in my hands, she immediately called Brenda. "This is clear blackmail," Brenda said after reading the letter. But we need to know if his threats have any basis. What do you remember exactly about the Williams case? I told her everything I could remember, including the instructions Mr. Morrison had given me about reorganizing the documents. Did you know that what you were doing could be illegal? She asked me. No, I said honestly. I was just following orders. Mr. Morrison told me it was standard procedure to protect attorney-client confidentiality. Brenda sighed. Legally, ignorance is no excuse. If you really did alter evidence, even without criminal intent, a crime was technically committed. My world fell apart again. Just when I thought I had escaped Greg's clutches, he found another way to control me. What do? I asked desperately. If I drop the charges, he goes free and kills me. If I don't drop them, I go to prison for something I did 15 years ago without knowing it was illegal. First, calm down, Brenda told me. Second, we're going to investigate exactly what documents your son has and how he got them. And third, we're going to look for ways to minimize the legal damage if it turns out there is indeed evidence against you. The next few days were a nightmare of legal investigation. Brenda worked with a team of lawyers specializing in old cases to review the entire Williams file. Meanwhile, I lived in a state of constant terror, expecting to be arrested at any moment. Clara was my salvation during those dark weeks. She not only gave me refuge in her home, but she became the sister I never had. Every night, she would sit with me while I cried, make me chamomile tea to help me sleep, and constantly remind me that I wasn't alone. Whatever happens, she would tell me, we'll face it together. You're no longer that scared woman living under your son's terrorism. But I did feel exactly like that scared woman. Greg had succeeded in returning me to the state of fear and hopelessness that had been my life for 3 years. A week later, the second letter arrived, even crueler than the first. I see you haven't learned your lesson, Mom. I see you still think you can defy me. Fine. Now everyone is going to find out what kind of person you really are. Along with the letter was an envelope with photographs of documents. Sure enough, internal memos from Morrison and Associates with my handwriting, where I had written notes in the margins, dates that had been altered, pages missing from original files. These photos will be in the hands of the newspaper by tomorrow night if you don't come to visit me in jail before Friday. You come alone, without lawyers, without witnesses, and you bring a signed letter asking for all charges against me to be dropped because it was all a misunderstanding caused by your mental deterioration. My mental deterioration. That accusation again that made my blood run cold. If you don't come, not only will they see these photos in the newspapers, they'll also see the recordings. Recordings? What recordings? Did you think I didn't know you had cameras installed in the house, Mom? Did you think I was that stupid? I have recordings too. Recordings of you accepting cash from the firm's clients. Money you never reported as income. Tax evasion, Mom. Another 15 years in prison. This time it wasn't just blackmail. It was a total psychological war. Greg had been preparing for this situation for months, maybe years. He had collected evidence, planned every move, anticipated my rebellion. When Brenda read the second letter, her expression became very serious. Monica, I need you to tell me the complete truth about your time at the firm. Anything you might have done, any irregular situation, any money you received outside of your salary. I told her about the cash Christmas bonuses Mr. Morrison gave me every year. Money I never declared because I thought they were personal gifts. I told her about the times when grateful clients had given me tips for special services. Money I also didn't report because I didn't know I had to. In total, how much money are we talking about over 40 years? She asked. Maybe about $15,000, I said with shame. Brenda calculated quickly. With interest and penalties, we'd be talking about a tax debt of about $40,000. But the most serious thing is that, technically, it is tax evasion. My son had built a perfect trap. If I reported him, he would destroy me with evidence of my own mistakes. If I didn't report him, he would remain free to abuse me and steal money. There is a third option, Brenda told me after thinking for a long time. An option that neither of you will expect. What is it? That we get ahead of him. That we voluntarily confess all your mistakes before he can use them as blackmail. and that we use that confession to prove that your son is a master manipulator who exerts psychological control over his victims, even from prison. It was a risky bet. It meant publicly admitting that I had committed crimes, facing possible legal consequences, exposing myself to public humiliation. But it also meant taking away Greg's main weapon, the secret. If we do this, Brenda continued, your son loses all his power over you. He can no longer blackmail you because there's nothing left to hide. I looked out the window at my house, which was still empty and trashed across the street. That house represented my past, my mistakes, my fears. But it also represented my future, my freedom, my chance to start over. Let's do it, I finally said. I'm tired of living in fear. I'm tired of my son controlling my life from a jail cell. Brenda smiled. Tomorrow, we're going to give Greg the surprise of his life. The day we decided to fight back came faster than I expected. Brenda had arranged a press conference for 2 p.m, where I would voluntarily confess all my past mistakes before Greg could use them against me. It was a risky strategy, but it was our only chance to regain control of the situation. That morning I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Greg's arrest, I wasn't afraid. I had made a decision that would change my life forever, and strangely, I felt at peace with it. Clara helped me get ready. I put on my most serious gray dress, the one I used for formal occasions when I worked at the firm. I put on light makeup, just enough not to look haggard, but without trying to hide who I really was. Are you sure about this, Monica? Clara asked me for the 5th time that morning. Once you say those words in public, you can't take them back. I'm completely sure, I replied, and was surprised by the firmness of my own voice. For 3 years, I lived as a prisoner in my own home, out of fear of the consequences. I'm not going to continue being a prisoner of my past mistakes. At 12 o'clock, Brenda called me with unexpected news. Monica, something extraordinary has just happened. Mr. Moreno, Greg's boss at the company, wants to talk to you before the press conference. Raphael was the man who had discovered Greg's thefts, the same one who had turned white as a sheet when he learned the truth. I didn't understand why he wanted to talk to me. We met at Brenda's office. Raphael was a man of about 55, with gray hair and a presence that inspired respect. When he saw me come in, he immediately stood up from his seat. Mrs. Davis, he said in a warm but serious voice, first, I want to apologize. If I had supervised Greg better, if I had paid attention to the warning signs, maybe we could have prevented you from suffering so much. His words surprised me. You had no way of knowing what was happening in my house. Maybe not, Raphael said, sitting across from me, but I did have a way of knowing that something strange was happening with the company's finances. Your son's thefts didn't start 6 months ago. They started 2 years ago. My heart stopped. 2 years. 2 years, Raphael confirmed. Small amounts at first, so small that we attributed them to accounting errors. But when we started investigating after your complaint, we discovered that he had been stealing systematically for a long time. Brenda leaned forward. How much money are we talking about in total? $130,000, Raphael said. $130,000 that went directly to accounts controlled by him, including his mother's bank account. I felt nauseous. Not only had I been a victim of physical and psychological abuse, I had been the unwitting tool of a massive theft for 2 whole years. But there's more, Raphael continued. When Greg was arrested, our legal department decided to investigate more deeply. We discovered that he had been falsifying reports, manipulating contracts, even selling confidential company information to competitors. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Raphael smiled for the first time since the conversation had begun. Because we want to offer you a job, Mrs. Davis. A job. During our investigation, we reviewed your work history, 40 years at Morrison & Associates, impeccable references, experience in complex cases. We need someone with your experience to help us rebuild everything your son destroyed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of facing arrest and public humiliation, I was being offered a chance to start over. The salary would be $4,000 a month, Raphael continued. Plus health benefits, plus a special compensation of $50,000 in recognition of the damage we unintentionally caused you. $4,000 a month. It was more than 3 times my current pension. And $50,000 in compensation. Suddenly, my future didn't look so hopeless. But there is one condition, Raphael added. We need you to testify at the trial against your son. Your testimony will be crucial to ensure he pays for all his crimes, not just the ones he committed against you. Of course, I said without hesitation. I'll do whatever is necessary. At 2 in the afternoon, the press room was filled with journalists, cameras, and microphones. Brenda had invited all the local media, explaining that a victim of domestic violence would be making an important statement about blackmail from prison. When I sat in front of those cameras, I felt a different kind of fear than I had experienced for years. It wasn't fear of Greg, it wasn't fear of blows or threats. It was fear of freedom, fear of the responsibility of owning my own life. My name is Monica Davis, I began, looking directly at the cameras. I am 61 years old, and for the last 3 years, I have been a victim of domestic violence at the hands of my son, Gregory Davis. I told my complete story. The beatings, the financial control, the threats, the systematic theft of my money. But I also told the part that Greg expected me to keep secret. During my 40 years working as a secretary at the Morrison & Associates law firm, I made mistakes, I said, feeling my voice grow firmer with each word. Mistakes that I didn't know were illegal at the time, but which I now recognize as such. I explained the Williams case, the altered documents, the unreported money. Everything. I held nothing back. My son discovered these mistakes and has been using them to blackmail me from prison. He threatened to expose me publicly if I didn't drop the charges against him. Today I am here to take that weapon away from him. I would rather face the consequences of my mistakes than continue to be a victim of his manipulation. The room was completely silent. The journalists were taking furious notes, the cameras recording every word. I want to send a message to all the women who are being abused by their sons, husbands, or partners, I continued. Emotional blackmail, financial control, threats of exposure, these are all forms of abuse. Do not let the fear of public judgment keep you prisoner. Freedom is worth more than reputation. After the press conference, Brenda informed me that the prosecutor's office had decided not to press charges against me for my past mistakes. Your voluntary confession, combined with the fact that you were a victim of blackmail, makes you more useful as a witness than as a defendant, she explained. That night, for the first time in months, I went back to sleep in my own house. Clara insisted on staying with me the first few nights, until I felt completely safe. As I lay in my own bed, in my own house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years, complete control over my own life. Greg was still in jail, facing multiple charges that would likely keep him there for many years. His blackmails had lost all power because I no longer had secrets to hide. My phone rang. It was a number from the jail, but this time I wasn't afraid to answer. Mom? It was Greg's voice, but it sounded completely defeated. I saw your press conference on the news. And what did you think of it? I asked, with a calmness that surprised me. You destroyed everything, he said, but without anger, only with a deep sadness. You destroyed my last chance of getting out of here. No, Greg, I replied. You destroyed that chance when you decided to turn your mother into your victim. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Are you ever going to forgive me? He finally asked. Someday, I said honestly. When you pay for what you did, when you seek real help to change, when you understand the damage you caused, someday I'll be able to forgive you. But I'll never forget. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Tomorrow I would start my new job, my new life. But tonight, I simply wanted to sleep in peace in my own house, without fear, without threats, without blackmail. For the first time in 3 years, I was completely free. And although the path had been painful, although I had had to face my own mistakes publicly, although I had lost the relationship with my son forever, I knew I had made the right decision. Greg had learned that victims can become strong, that secrets lose their power when exposed to the light, and that justice, though delayed, eventually arrives. And I had learned that it is never too late to reclaim your own life, no matter how many years you have lived in the shadows. This was my story of liberation, A story that I hope inspires other women to break their own chains, no matter who put them there.